Hey there, nerds, it's me, your protagonist, Dr. Jordan Breeding, and today I'm attempting the impossible. I'm gonna talk video games and hope that people actually watch. Since last time I tried this, it resulted in my worst performing episode, even with the hard drives Jeremy Kaplowitz. What do you freaking gamers want?
There's a crisis going on, and the gamers, they're upset.
You want Elden Ring shit? Is that the only content you crave? Well then why don't you grab a moon veil and come at me, bro?
No shame in it.
Sorry. I know movies are my usual lane, so I'm going to talk about a bunch of obscure video games from when I was a kid, but explain how they're objectively scientifically better, plotted, and more interesting than most modern films. Also, I suck at Elden Ring. I'm more of a Rainbow Six guy, but really I'm more of a sex guy. I'm out here having the sex. I don't play games. I play sex games.
You are maidenless.
Shut up. Second Sight is a science fiction action stealth video game about mind powers from 2004 that's unfortunately been buried in video game history by the science fiction action stealth video game about mind powers from 2004, PsyOps: The Mindgate Conspiracy. And to be fair, PsyOps lets you brain surf on top of the corpses of your enemies while firing machine guns, so I get it. And you get it too if you watch my other damn video game video, damn it!
Alright, I think my work here is done.
Whatever. Second Sight was developed by Free Radical, the developers behind the greatest video game of all time, Timesplitters 2.
Mr. Giggles, wanna see my pocket?
And initially, the game starts off like any classic garden variety amnesiac superhero origin story. It's a tale we've encountered a million times. On the low power end, we've got Jason Bourne realizing that though he doesn't know his own name, he does know that he can run extremely fast and eat like 15 pancakes in one sitting.
Jesus Christ.
On the high power end is Captain Marvel, which I feel a little uncomfortable making fun of because I don't want to appear to agree with some of the worst people on the internet, but thankfully, they're probably not watching this video because it's for gamers. Oh no.
I don't want to reward this crap at all. I want to see how the movie does. I want to see if we actually have an impact or not, because I'm not sure if we will.
But okay, so a parapsychology researcher wakes up in a lab with no memories and slowly developing powers like telekinesis and invisibility and the ability to huck air bubbles into dudes' crotches to death like a more lethal peripheral free version of that air Zuka we used to drive substitute science teachers insane with. And as the game progresses, the protagonist of Second Sight experiences flashbacks to a Pentagon-approved mission that led to the deaths of his entire squad and ultimately his capture. Again, pretty similar to Captain Marvel and Jason Bourne flashbacks to some doomed mission with explosions and bullets and sad little children and all that shit. But the crazy twist in Second Sight is that somehow the skills the protagonist learns in the present can be utilized to affect his pre-powers past. For example, he reads a report about how the Russians attacked and killed the scientist his team was hoping to recover, and then in a flashback, he uses this information to save said scientist, which in turn causes the scientist to suddenly be alive in the present. Even wilder, at some point he manages to bring his mental powers with him to rupture dude's junk in the past. By itself, that's already an interesting experiment in mental time travel and a bit more intriguing than Jason Bourne realizing, oh, I kill people good now, but I used to kill people good in the past. I wonder if I'll remain good at killing people in the future.
You know I can't tell you that.
What a twisted web of killing and motorcycle chases we weave. That's not even Second Sight's bonkerest reveal. See, the final twist is that the protagonist's flashbacks are actually the present, and the present is actually just one possible future reality that adjusts to his actions in the real present.
I don't get this.
The main character had parapsychological powers all along, but the first one to develop was his ability to see into the future. But he didn't know he had this ability, so his view of time got thrown out of whack. He's actually developing penis-bursting powers in the present, which then naturally gave him dick-popping powers in the future, rather than the other way around. Even better, all his fellow soldiers that he originally believed were dead can actually be saved thanks to his ability to snoop around in the future and determine how to avoid their untimely, possibly wiener-centric demises. It's a fun double twist on a relatively standard premise and a great way to introduce a new character's abilities while still giving us a fun, twisty plot to keep things interesting and provide context for why you be busting all them nuts.
You bit me, you little bastard!
The latest movie versions of Venom portray the symbiote as evil-ish, but Tom Hardy's character is so friggin' nuts himself, it never really feels like the two are that much at odds. Sure, sometimes Venom kills things unprompted, or makes Hardy eat yucky stuff, or the two might say mean things to each other that sound lifted from a rom-com script, and lead to disputes resolved just as easily.
I am kind of a loser, like you.
But, you know, while that makes for a good nap in the cool dark of a theater once the novelty of a grown man hopping into a lobster tank for no reason wears off, there's not really a lot of dramatic tension.
This is dead.
Obviously, they're gonna work together to beat the shit out of Woody Harrelson. Who wouldn't?
Can I help you, sir?
We know their predictable relationship struggles only exist to kill time until the inevitable, CG-enabled, vomit-inducing, action-packed finale. By contrast, The Darkness offers up a similar premise in that a normal dude is impregnated with a sentient, malevolent force that allows him superpowers. This darkness gives our hero the confidence to believe in himself. And also murder 1,000 mobster goons in creative ways as part of his quest to get back at the head mobster who tried to assassinate him. And that alone lends itself to several cool, gory action beats that wouldn't fit in a PG-13 Marvel movie, but then things get really twisted.
Again, that's too bad.
When the mobster captures the main character's girlfriend and threatens to kill her, the Darkness, who to this point been extremely helpful in that way that a nuclear bomb is really helpful at committing war crimes, physically restrains the protagonist in place, so he's forced to watch his girlfriend murdered in front of him. This darkness is well named, methinks. It's also just the beginning, because watching his girlfriend's brutal demise doesn't sit so great with the main character, so he kills himself and wakes up in hell.
That was the first time I died.
That just so happens to look like a World War I style trench warfare scenario, but also includes the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, so like it's one of those bad hells.
That would make grown men cry.
In there, he meets his great-great-grandfather who admits it's his fault our hero's infected with this darkness, and then the hero somehow comes back to life, finds the main police captain working with the mobster, and then blows himself and the captain up, sending him back to hell again.
That was the second time I died.
And then he comes back to life again after negotiating a deal with the darkness to enact his sweet revenge, but with the caveat that with each life he takes, he'll be closer to permanently losing control to the darkness. This creates a much more interesting dynamic now that the thing that gives him power is also the thing threatening to destroy him. He gets his revenge, but ultimately he literally loses his soul. Tell me that's not more interesting and complex than 4 hours of snap out of it! The first Riddick movie, Pitch Black, largely succeeds because of its small scope and unique hook. A small group of spacefarers become trapped on a planet experiencing a triple eclipse, which allows a bunch of evil bats to come out and eat everybody. Their only hope is the crazy prisoner of the group who can see at night and presumably spends his free time racing muscle cars. Genius. Then all the later movies tried to build out a bunch of lore and world building and
about some ghost army.
They mostly sucked. What they should have done is adapted the video game Escape from Butcher Bay that serves as a prequel to the first movie. Riddick is delivered to a supermax security prison on a prison planet because sci-fi, and what follows is an absolutely pitch perfect movie plot. Using smarts, brawn, and eventually night vision enabled eyeballs, Riddick manages to escape from each prison level, almost. In single max, he instigates a full-scale riot, but is captured before he can get all the way out, and is thrown into double max, which he also manages to escape thanks to some newfound sort of magic powers, until he's captured again and thrown into freaking triple max, where he's perpetually medically rendered unconscious except 2 minutes a day and stuck in a cryo chamber. And somehow he manages to escape this too, which, you know, granted, it is a prequel. He's got to get out at some point. Yes. But what's intriguing is watching Riddick wriggle out of increasingly complex situations using only his cleverness paired with his blood-stained knuckles. Just like the first movie, it's cool, it's contained, and does a fantastic job of hinting at an entire galaxy's worth of interesting religious sci-fi mystery without forcibly explaining everything to us. For example, we sort of see how he gets his magic eyes, kind of, but it's a bit vague, a bit mystical, and apparently has nothing to do with midichlorians? Actually, I've changed my mind. I need another prequel where we learn that Vin Diesel's eyes run on tiny worms in his blood. I don't even care if it's a Fast and Furious movie, and I demand it. I demand it.
I live my life.
A microscopic life form that resides within all living cells.
At a time.
All right, in a lot of ways, this twist mirrors the Second Sight one, but it's still worth talking about because I've decided it is. And I'm the god of this world. And also because even though most Star Wars fans agree that Gene Roddenberry's The Empire Strikes Back reveal of baby Luke Skywalker hatching out of one of Chewbacca's eggs is the series' greatest twist, I dare say it's Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic that featured the much better constructed reveal. Yeah, even better than when J.J. Abrams took that massive bong hit, revealed Palpatine very much gets down with the getting down.
Somehow Palpatine.
Am I right?
And you know who agrees? George Lucas, probably. And not just because he's an abolitionist.
I sold them to the white slavers that...
When talking about the making of Gene Roddenberry's Empire, Lucas bluntly admitted the big twist that Luke originated in Darth Vader's metal groin only came as an afterthought. By contrast, the devs at BioWare revealed that Knights of the Old Republic was built with the goal of unexpectedly groin-punching players in the feels from the outset.
Evisceration works well, electrocution and blunt trauma also work well.
And that big reveal hides masterfully behind classic RPG shit. You start a long time ago, as in 4,000 years before the movies, as an amnesiac tasked with finding a bunch of Jedi Abrams mystery boxes before the new Sith Lord Darth Malak, who's just usurped his Darth Master. He's Darth Master. So when non-Jedi characters start talking about the true power of the Force like this...
They say the Force can do terrible things to a mind. It can wipe away your memories and destroy your very identity.
Players assume the game's just hyping up the cool-ass powers they'll get to use on unsuspecting enemies later on. And even though the powers you do get do slap,
I could spend decades slaughtering.
You never quite get a hold of anything quite as mind-altering as characters suggest as possible. That's because the game's just subtly dropping hints as to what's really going on. Like how Jedi Master Grumpy Grumpster isn't too sold on the idea of training your character, despite you being super good at rolling nat 20s. And okay, I'm about to tell you what's going on, but this game is a bit less obscure than the others, and the second game in the series was just recently re-released, and a remake of the first is on the way, so if you want to wait and play it right now before I reveal all, well, here's some motivation. Isn't that cool? Okay, here she comes. As it turns out, the reason why the main character has no recollection of his prior life is the Jedi erased his memory in an attempt to reform him, for he was Darth Revan, the aforementioned presumed dead Sith Master Lord and clear inspiration for Kylo Ren. Traitor! It's a BioShock level twist because it forces the player to reevaluate every decision they've made throughout their playthrough. Knights of the Old Republic is one of those pick your path games where you decide whether to choke or hug orphans and the plot changes to reflect those decisions. But whereas pre-twist, those choices mostly came down to how shitty a date Jordan had had and how much he wanted to torture hapless space people because his coffee was cold. Post-twist, it's a character's unaware struggle with who they were and who they've become after a morally dubious mind pillaging. This is the movie they should greenlight next, not whatever most recent trilogy they've announced and then canceled before just commissioning another 10 episodes of The Book of the Jizz Elephant. And I guess this is as good a time as any to reveal twist! Dave is now my superhero sidekick, and yes, his name is Jizz Elephant.
Can we work on that a little bit?
No.
I'm cool with that.
Great.